innovation. So in 2020, NFTs took the industry by storm, and today, 5 years later, they've become a core part of the Hedera ecosystem. So in this panel, we're going to dive into what's next for NFTs on Hedera. So please welcome Ty Smith and his panelists to the stage.
All right. Everyone feel good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the second half of HederaCon. Feel free to take some seats, get settled in. Lunch was amazing. And we're going to get into NFT innovation and the next wave of it. I would like to just introduce my panelists that have all come on stage. Michael, go first. Just give us your name, the company, and what your company does.
Hi, I'm Michael Cantor. I'm the founder of KiloScribe, and I'm also the president of Hashgraph Online. We make putting data as easy as using Dropbox on Hedera through Hashnals and various open source standards like HCS1, 3, 7, 10, etc. And I'll kick it up to May.
Hey guys, I'm back. I'm May Chan. I'm the CEO of Hashpack. We're the leading wallet on Hedera, and we've done some really cool things with NFTs since the start of NFTs on Hedera.
All right. So I am Manu. I am the CEO and founder of Kabila. We do different tools for creating, launching, and managing tokenized communities, and almost everything we do it with NFTs.
Awesome, awesome. Really appreciate that. And yeah, we have some legends here from the space who've been building on Hedera Network for multiple years and putting tools in the hands of people to build better user experience and a better understanding of NFTs, which is our topic today. So just to open up the discussion, there's been a lot of speculation on what is the next NFT cycle. 2021 is different than 2025. And so just in the scope of NFT innovation and the trends that we're seeing, I guess the underlining or the title would be, are they dead? Are NFTs dead or yet? And I think the answer will be no, but I just want to open that up as an open discussion. What do you see as the innovative ways that NFTs are being utilized in 2025? And how does that differ? How has that matured from the 2021 spike that we saw in the PFP era of tokenization? And it's open up to anyone on the panel.
Yeah, well, I think that in 2021 we didn't have almost half of the infrastructure that we have right now. So we were just experimenting with NFTs with almost no tools. Now the good thing is that we're finally having a lot of stuff to play with. We have, an amazing wallet, Hashback. We have Kabila wallet. We have, an amazing, inscription tools like KiloScribe. We have, you can now do a lot of different things. So that's something we didn't have yet at that time. So we normally say that we had cars, which were the NFTs, without roads. So it was very hard to actually do something with those NFTs. But now that's changing, and at least we are seeing a lot of interesting use cases from real companies, like real businesses, not just degens. So, I mean, I love degens, but we need more than degens. So that's something that's changing.
Awesome. So May, I know with Hashpack and the innovation of NFTs, your company specifically has done something like an INO. So how do you see INOs playing and being a tokenization method or a vertical that is really lucrative for startups, for funding? And I guess, what was your experience with INOs?
INOs are a tricky one. They are a way to kind of bring the retail community into your product and your community and get them invested in what you are building in. We had a really great success with our INO, and I think that using NFTs as a way to sort of fund your platforms, that's something that a lot of companies are experimenting with. And I think that it's fun, it's tricky. But yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot of innovation in that realm on how to utilize tokens to come up with innovative ways to fund your projects, your companies, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a very exciting time. I remember when that whole launched. Yeah, the whole CT was just filled with excitement, and I think that ability to get that groundswell of excitement from your community as you're building your company is silical, beneficial for everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then Michael, for just innovation of token gating and understanding how that can be paired with the consensus service, which I know you're intimately working on. How do you see NFTs and the token service, or I'm sorry, the token service and the consensus service being utilized together for innovation, which again, KiloScribe and HashGraph Online is doing a lot of those things?
Yeah, great question. If you guys know anything about me, you know, last year we helped create Hashnals. That was back in March. It started off with a bang. We inscribed 3.2 gigabytes of data on the Hedera consensus service. And then we tokenized it on HTS, and we called them Hashnals. Hashnals are similar from you know, what we have in the Bitcoin space with ordinals, where we place a lot of value on the provenance and the location of the data, not just the NFT's attributes, but the actual metadata being 100% on-chain, or in our case, on-graph. Since we launched Hashnals, we've generated 11.5 million transactions on the network, and that's one thing that gets me really excited about Hedera, is that we've got this use case here that's actually generating real revenue on the network that's unsubsidized, and people are using it every day. But I think like the concept of NFTs will change. You know, we're talking about INOs, and Hashpack, of course, are one of the most successful INOs that we've seen on Hedera. I think also we're seeing an era where things become hyper financialized. And every time I talk to other founders about ideas or things that they're thinking about doing, especially in the NFT ecosystem, I ask the question, well, how does your NFT tie into that financial component? What is the way of doing that? And I think that's going to be the most interesting aspect, especially in terms of HCS, when you start talking about things like smart hashnals and programmatic selection from smart contract data to return something on the screen. How can that play into an actual business use case? So to summarize, I think one of the things I'm most excited about with the new NFT wave is how we utilize on-graph content through hashnals.
Very cool. That ties really well into the next question that I have from standardization and wallet perspective. May, I know you were pivotal in creating HIP 412,
Yep.
which became the base layer of metadata for NFTs.
Yep.
And as we see this innovation in both tokenization, you know, we have the INOs, we have RWAs, with all of that comes new standardization like ERC 1400. But specifically with the token service, how do you as Hashpack look at the standardization trajectory, and what are you either excited about in the innovation or being mindful of? Like, what's your perspective on the new standardization coming in this next wave of NFTs?
I think in order to answer how the future is going to go, we can look back at how NFTs started on Hedera back in 2021, where there was no standards, and people were sort of using the OpenSea standard, and they're sort of using the Solana standard, and those standards weren't really well documented. And so we had marketplaces launching that kind of implemented it in their way, and launchpads that implemented in their way, and they weren't cross-compatible. And so what I did when we started Hashpack is we got all the community together and we wrote a standard, HIP 412, which I based off of the OpenSea standard, and I formalized it. And we got the first marketplaces in the ecosystem to build it, using that standard, and the wallets using that standard, and then everything just meshed. Now you could launch an NFT on Hedera without worrying about where it was going to be sold or created or looked at, right? And everyone who comes into the ecosystem now uses that standard. And not only that, it's an open standard. So now there's NFT groups that are building music NFTs that are building on that original standard with a new HIP number and everything like that. And I think that this is the way that we need to look at NFTs and functionality in the future, is that there are other NFTs that are coming out, whether it's RWAs, whether it's logistic chain stuff, whether it's consumer engagement, and there are standards out there that are sort of being used, and if we can tie that all together and get the real industry leaders in the room to use the same thing, which is a really tough thing, but we can try to adapt what we're building so that it works with as many platforms as possible, that's when we're going to see more companies come in. The friction for entering the scene and building platforms on the scene is going to go down, and then we can just focus on building out products that actually generate value. that's where I think standards are going to go, and they play a huge part in NFTs.
Yeah, I think it's the most important and least thought about part of development. And I think everyone's seen that meme if you're a developer, where it's like, there's no standards out there that do what I want, and there's like 1,000 standards that don't do what I want. So I'm going to make one that combines them all, and then there's 1,001 standards.
Yes.
So I think the cool pivotal part of standardization is adoption. And the moment that Hashpack and Kabila and Centex and all of these organizations show the same content, like HIP 412 was just accepted across the network, then it becomes real. And that last part, anyone can write a standard on a wall, but it takes it takes a village. Yeah.
And the hash nodes that Cantor is talking about, which used Hedera as a technical layer, as opposed to IPFS or other layers, Arweave, et cetera, that other ecosystems use, hash nodes, from a metadata perspective, adhere to 412 standards, which means that as long as your platform supports the technology, you can read the data just the same as any other NFT on the network. And that's the power of this sort of building to a standard and getting people to buy into that. It just makes it so much easier.
It's actually kind of crazy how, like, as you develop these standards, and like, to most people in the audience too, like, standards are not sexy. It's not like something that, like, when you think of Web3, it's not a layer 2, but it's actually fundamentally so important. If you think about how the internet was built, TCP, HTTP, SSL, like, these are all things we take for granted. But if it's not for primitives like HIP 412 or HCS1, none of the cool things that we have on the internet would ever exist today. Standards are kind of like the backbone of everything that we take for granted.
So that's a really great breakdown, and I like the idea or the proposition you put out there, May, where it's like HIP 412 doesn't matter if it's on IPFS or Arweave or HCS1. The standard, the way that you save that data, you reference that data, you interact with technology, isn't as important as the structure of being able to read and write that same exact understanding. And so to just extrapolate that over to Michael, with KiloScribe and everything you're doing with like smart hash nodes, do you want to kind of just expand a little bit on how smart hash nodes take May said, take 412, expand it, and then interact with different parts of the Hedera ecosystem, bringing logic into tokenized NFTs using the consensus service. So you're kind of taking all of the services of Hedera and putting them together. If you could just explain that a little.
Yeah, and smart hash nodes is such a big standard. It's quite hard to adjust, but like from the big picture perspective, what it's really doing is it's using primitives like HIP 412 and HCS1 and combining it into a neat orchestration. So let's say, for example, like practical terms, before I get into technical, you have a background image that's in your wallet, and it can either be purple or it could be green. And you get the green version if HBAR's price is over $1, I hope so, or if it goes below $1, then you get the red version of the background. And the way this kind of works through smart hash nodes, essentially, you have an HCS2 topic, and HCS2 is like a registry of messages, essentially. And some of them are defined as EVM config, and they basically say, I'll read this smart contract that has HBAR's price, and I'll pull it in. And then we pass that over to a WASM file, and then the WASM file reads the smart contract data and says, oh, OK, I see HBAR's price is over $1, so I'm going to render this version, or I'm going to render this version instead, and then it gets returned to the client. And that's essentially it for smart hash nodes. And then coming back to my point earlier about hyper-financialization, how can we use this standard to start building new use cases from enterprise, financial, insurance terms? You can have an insurance NFT that covers your current insurance plan that changes based off smart contract data live in your wallet. So you can see that rate in your wallet through the metadata in real time.
Very cool. Yeah, it's, I think all of this innovation that is continually being built on Hedera, it's always great to have events like these where we can talk about the builders and what they're making. And I just want to pass it over to Manu. I know Kabila has built an entire platform and a suite of tools, and you did it with JavaScript. And I think one of the most exciting things about Hedera is that the underlying technology is accessible to the biggest developer pool on the planet, which is Web 2 developers, JavaScript, HTML. So could you just go over like kind of the thesis of Kabila and how you guys created these tools and how you cultivated your community around the accessibility of Hedera's technology?
Yeah, so I think this is one of the most important things for everything we've been building. Like when I was starting with my co-founders, Kabila, one of the biggest challenges was, finding blockchain developers, developers with experience that also knew Solidity. That is a real challenge, even harder than finding investors sometimes. But when you come and say, no, 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 you can just program in JavaScript and you have an SDK that you can almost do everything, that is a huge advantage over other chains. Like, I mean, a startup is one of the key things, it's the speed. So that gave us a lot of speed to try new things, test if it's working, if it's not, with the community, and iterate, and we were able to build so many products because of that. And not only helps you build faster, it's a lot more affordable for you, and also it helps with the code is cleaner. So you can have a bigger infrastructure running because it's a lot simpler, and you can modify stuff, you can update stuff, and it's really cool to build on Hedera. So having those SDKs, I think we don't talk about that enough. I think it's very, very important.
Awesome. Yeah, it's the accessibility again. When I was way back when in 2020, I just came across Hedera and the docs. The ability for me to create a token in 6 lines of code when I had no idea about Solidity. I was like, everything seems so inaccessible when you know Web 2 and you don't know Web 3 from the EVM and smart contracts, or at least back in 2020. Yeah. So yeah, it's great to see that that opportunity and innovation was clearly met by your team, and then you saw all the things you could build just from JavaScript.
Yeah. And I think that that's really one of the huge advantages of Hedera when we're talking about enterprise building NFTs or tokens and putting that into their platforms. After they've decided, I want to use Web3 technology, now I have to actually build something. Having it in JavaScript or TypeScript just makes it so much easier to get something off the ground, which reduces your risk as a company, which increases your product velocity. It saves you so much, right? And I think that it's in itself just a great accelerator of an innovation in any space, but especially the NFT space in Hedera.
Yeah, fully agree.
It's a blessing.
Yes. And so coming up here, we got about a little over 5 minutes, but Manu, I know Kabila's been working on, we were just talking about standards, but communication standards. And I know you have a tool or a community communication tool such as Plazas. And then can you just talk about what are you looking for in the future in the innovation of standards of communication on Hedera? And I know you're at the beginning part of that journey, so I think this is good. We just talked about 412, which is the end of that journey. It's very solidified. You're at the beginning of a communication standard. So can you just kind of talk through how you're approaching that and what you guys are doing at Kabila with Plazas?
Yeah, I think that standards, as May and Michael were saying, are fundamental for building the whole thing. 412 was the beginning of the whole thing. Like it helped a lot, to build stuff, to use something and be interoperable. Across all the apps and wallets. But now, as we are building, we're seeing a lot more, things we can do with NFTs. So one of the things that we were doing with NFTs at the beginning is okay, you can crowdfund with NFTs. You can provide utility to your community, to the ones that support you. But one very interesting thing is that the NFT, it's actually a public certificate that says I'm the owner of this collection or this community, and whoever holds one of these NFTs is my follower, my holder. So that is something that seems simple, but that means you're actually owning the connection with your community. You finally own your community. You are building something for you, not for a centralized platform. Now, that is very cool, but now those are the standards that we need to discuss with the different projects, okay, how are we going to be, for example, if we create a collection, how would you say that, okay, this is our official collection? Like maybe I have another ones, but this is the official one. So for example, using the DIDs, you could put that information in that, so in the document. So these are the kind of things that I think we'll be working with the community and the ecosystem, and it will help a lot, unleash the next, evolution of NFTs into space. So I think it's going to be very cool.
Very cool, yeah. Again, I think Hedera is uniquely positioned to be able to attack these problems, because when you come to communication standards, doing that all inside of a tokenized asset in a Solidity contract, it's cumbersome, it's expensive, it fluctuates in cost. But because we have the Hedera consensus service, which is fundamentally built to be fast and amazing at putting data on it and transmitting, along with threshold keys. Not to get too nerdy, but you have this ability to say, hey, only Manu and I can talk here. And then because you have a ECDSA key, getting nerdier, we can encrypt it. And you can encrypt it for me knowing my public key on this decentralized system.
Yeah.
So in this ideation of intercommunication and of profile creation, how do you see tokens involving HCS? And this, I can open this up for the panel too, because I know this is probably like right down Michael's wheelhouse, but everyone has a chance to answer. How do you see that tokenization and that Hedera consensus service becoming closer and closer together to abstract and create a ubiquitous, seamless user experience that is open to pretty much anyone who's not wildly technical and knows what an ECDSA key is?
Well, I think the first thing we were saying is standards.
Yep.
So we need standards so that we can all take it. The good thing about Web3 and this thing that we are all building here is that there is no other way. Like if there are 2 or 3 projects collaborating on a standard, if someone comes and do a centralized thing, that's not going to work. So at the end of the day, what's happening is that the whole thing is the power, the ownership, everything is flowing to the user, from platforms to the user. So we gotta get on those standards, and once those standards are there, then it's working in amazing UI. Hashback, it's a good example of amazing UI. We're trying also, to make good products that are simple to use. So I think first standards, and then having amazing UI will help a lot.
So one of the things, if you're talking about innovation in the space and utility that is seamless, one of the things that I've been working on, and then I wrote my team into it because it was kind of like a hobby project with me, and I also wrote Cantor into it, is voting, but not like voting to manage funds or voting to manage business processes, but voting for the community so that you can participate in a poll. So like, for example, a Twitter poll where you put up a poll and then people vote on it, and then that poll disappears after like 24 hours or whatever, it goes off of your feed. Cantor and I worked together on a standard using his Hashgraph Online website, basically the format that he built, to put together a voting standard that can take your NFT that you hold, and anybody who owns that NFT can vote in that poll, and so you can involve your community in that way. And the NFT itself doesn't have to get more complicated. It's actually the settings of the poll that is set up in the database, in the metadata, that determines that this NFT now has this utility, which is a very decentralized and kind of seamless way of adding utility to your token. And those standards are built off of HCS or Hashgraph Online standards. And I have to upload them and push the PR to the repo. I've kind of been busy on that, but it's ready to go, and hopefully we'll have a community site that you can just participate, make your own polls, participate in that soon, TM. But we've been working on it for quite a bit and are really excited to bring that out. But just an example of innovation that can happen in the NFT and token space that is just easier because we've got people like this that are working together, collaborating, building standards. And I hope that as we go forward, we're going to be building standards with other ecosystems. Actually, I'll say DREC is a great example of that, where we have multiple ecosystems, multiple L1s that are working with us on Hedera's side to build out a cross-platform, decentralized recovery system. If you haven't seen Lehman talk about it, go check that out. But and not really an NFT thing, but it's definitely a standards thing and definitely a collaboration thing. There's a lot of cool things that we're doing across the ecosystem.
I was just going to talk about the voting standard too, and I think you were being a little bit humble too. The voting standard that made it is actually the single largest HCS standard that we have on Hashgraph Online, like pure character count. You were so meticulous in every single detail with that voting standard. And I'm just really excited for it to be out in the wild when it comes. Like, you thought of things like snapshots and how you won't get double votes and things like that. It's really meticulous. And that comes back to the power of standards and having a decentralized solution for actually peer reviewing and making sure that those standards are up to scruff. With Hashgraph Online, we have 9 retail organizations like Hashpack who actually go and help us with that. And I think that's incredible. And that's definitely a great example of how we can tie in HTS and HCS. I think the other big thing that a lot of people don't know about Hedera And the genius part of it is that we have this separation of services, HTS, HCS, and they're separated so that those nodes can be really good at specific tasks. And just one of the many things that makes Hedera great.
Awesome. Yeah, I just want to thank everyone on this panel. This was a great conversation about NFT innovation. I hope everyone learned a lot, or at least was entertained by our panel. And again, I just want to thank you, Manu, May,